Can we assume that the structure of the solar system is the result of the intelligent intervention? Or is it moving strictly according to the laws of nature by sheer luck, and mankind has simply not fully explored it? Now you will see the anomalies of our solar system, which even the brightest astronomical minds are powerless to explain. Over the past 4 years, thanks to the Kepler Space Telescope, we have learned that there are a lot of planets in our galaxy. But the most interesting fact that Kepler got for us is that there is nothing like our solar system among all these planets. This fact is perfectly visible in this Kepler Orrery 4 animation. The difference in the orbits of hundreds of exoplanets from the Kepler database with our own solar system immediately catches the eye. Before the start of the Kepler mission in 2009, astronomers assumed that most exoplanetary systems would be arranged like ours: small stone planets closer to the center, huge gas giants in the middle, and icy chunks of stone on the outskirts. But it turned out that everything is arranged much more bizarre. Kepler has found hot Jupiters, huge gas giants that almost touch the stars of their system. There are more than 700 star systems in total, and none of them is similar to ours. And what will the world-renowned astronomers say? Let's start with Professor of Astronomy Frederick Rossio. The shape of exoplanet orbits are elongated, not circular. The planets appear not where we expect them to be. Many Jupiter-like giant planets, known as hot Jupiters, are so close to the stars that they revolve around them in a few days. Such a turbulent story leaves very little chance for a calm solar system like ours to form, and our models confirm this. In the same vein, Leonid Ksanfomility, head of the laboratory of the Department of Planetary Physics of the Institute of Space Research of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Doctor of Physical and Mathematical Sciences, said, "Planetary systems are designed on the principle that the largest planet is located closest to its sun. In our system, little Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, and the orbits of the giant planets Jupiter and Saturn are far from the star." Of course, some scientific models justify such an anomalous arrangement. But in practice, looking through telescopes, astronomers have not yet found similar systems. And will they find any? That's the question. Many people know this fact from school. The distances from the sun to the planets are determined by the simplest regularity and are expressed by this simple formula, where n is the ordinal number of the planet, and r is the distance to the planet in astronomical units, with 1 astronomical unit equal to the distance from the Earth to the sun. So, to calculate the distance from the sun to any planet, you only need to know the distance from the Earth to the sun. Don't you think it's strange that of all the planets in the solar system, the only inhabited planet, Earth, plays such an important role in this equation? In fact, there is a theory that explains everything. In 2003, the famous philosopher and transhumanist Nick Bostrom published the work Are We Living in a Computer Simulation? There he suggested that our world is a virtual reality, which was invented by an advanced civilization. And with the development of computer technology, more and more people with academic degrees are beginning to discuss and look for evidence of simulation of our world in serious conversations. And everyone has already heard about Elon Musk, who is convinced that everything around us is virtual reality. According to many experts, somewhere in 50 to 100 years, the compute capability of computers will grow millions of times. Consequently, we will be able to create virtual worlds so realistic that the characters will actually have a mind, but have no idea that they live in a simulation. If humanity is slowly moving towards creating a large-scale virtual reality around itself, what prevents us from assuming that another mind in the universe has already done this, and we are part of this computer reality? Modern science believes that 99% of the universe consists of a kind of emptiness, which is also called dark energy or dark matter. They are called dark not because there is not enough light in them, but because modern science has almost no data about them. We only know 1% of the universe. How can we even say that it's 100% real? What if all these anomalies in our Earth-oriented solar system are evidence that our world is a simulation? And we don't notice the virtuality of our world in the same way as we don't notice the panda hanging out among the snowmen in this picture. But back to 1% of the observable universe. There are things in it called orbital resonances. These are phenomena when the periods of rotation of 2 or more celestial bodies are correlated as small natural numbers. As a result, these bodies sometimes converge, being at certain points in their orbits. Senior researcher at the Institute of Solar Terrestrial Physics of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Sergei Yazov, candidate of physical and mathematical sciences, will tell us what is wrong with them. We know that the orbit of Uranus has a resonance of 1 to 3 relative to Saturn. The orbit of Neptune has a resonance of 1 to 2 relative to Uranus. The orbit of Pluto has a resonance of 1 to 3 relative to Neptune. We may assume that the solar system was created, or corrected, with the purpose to cultivate a terrestrial civilization. Astronomer Leonid Xanthomalites said a similar thing. Saturn's orbit exhibits a 2 to 5 resonance with Jupiter. The structure of the solar system, apparently, was determined precisely by Jupiter, since the parameters of the orbits of all the other planets are in the correct ratios with its orbit. However, the formation of Jupiter in its current orbit is an improbable event. Despite the large number of models that explain the resonant properties of the solar system, we may also keep in mind the model of artificial interference. The movement of Mercury is coordinated with the movement of the Earth. From time to time, Mercury is in inferior conjunction with the Earth. This is the position when the Earth and Mercury are on the same side of the Sun, lining up with it on the same straight line. The inferior conjunction is repeated every 116 days, which coincides with the time of 2 full revolutions of Mercury, and when Mercury meets the Earth, it always faces it with the same side. Our neighbor Venus is also fraught with many unsolvable mysteries. Why doesn't it have a magnetic field and radiation belts? Why is the water from the bowels of a heavy and heated planet not squeezed out into the atmosphere, as it happened on Earth? Why doesn't Venus rotate from west to east, like all planets, but from east to west? Maybe it turned upside down and its north pole became the south pole? Or did someone twist it in the other direction before throwing it into orbit? With a periodicity of 584 days, Venus gets as close to the Earth as possible, ending up in the inferior conjunction. At these moments, Venus always faces the Earth with the same side. This strange eye-to-eye look cannot be explained from the point of view of classical celestial mechanics. Here is a visualization of the mutual motion of the Earth and Venus. The scale is relative, but you can get the idea. In the rays of this amazing flower, the planets look at each other. Thus, Venus and Mercury have a so-called resonance of the second kind. They are oriented not to the Sun, but to the Earth. From all of the above, a quite seditious conclusion suggests itself. The functionality of the 4 planets closest to the Sun was originally linked with the organization of conditions suitable for life. And the giant planets, which are never in the last rows in other systems, were the direct engine of the mechanism called the solar system. Planetary engineering, take it or leave it. But it's time to take a closer look at Mars. First, a little conspiracy theory. Relatively recently, the facts of NASA's forgery of the real color of Mars were revealed. The attention of the public was attracted by a photo depicting an agency employee against the background of 2 monitors, where the colors of Mars are very similar to those of Earth, with a blue sky and gray and brown rocks. As a result of research, it turned out that the images of Mars are actually very similar to those of Earth. There is a theory that all footage of Mars is made on Earth. Another point of view says that the atmosphere on Mars is much closer to Earth than is commonly believed. Here are a few more anomalies of Mars, which indicate that the living conditions on this planet were not so far from those on Earth. Then a cataclysm occurred that disrupted the orbital and climatic features of the planet. It has an elliptical orbit as if disturbed by something or someone, which annually brings it close to the Sun and then carries it very far away from it. The rotation of the planet is much slower than it should be. Mars has almost no magnetic field. For long periods, its axis of rotation acts really crazy, radically changing the angle of its inclination to the Sun. The vast majority of Martian impact craters are much larger than they should be according to statistical probability and are crowded in the hemisphere south of the so-called dividing line. The northern hemisphere is much less pitted with craters and is a continuous basin 2 miles lower in altitude than the southern hemisphere. The dividing line between north and south is physically marked on the surface of Mars by the slope of the mountainous southern hemisphere. This unique line runs around the entire planet in a huge uneven circle that crosses the equator at an angle of about 35 degrees. A unique sign of Mars is the monstrous abyss of the Mariner Valley, 4 miles deep and 2,500 miles long, dug into its surface. Most scientists still tend to believe that Phobos and Deimos are asteroids trapped in the gravitational captivity of Mars. However, this theory, according to Professor Fred Singer of the University of Virginia, contradicts the laws of physics and cannot explain why both satellites move around the planet in almost circular and equatorial orbits. The periods of rotation around the axis of each of the satellites coincide with the period of rotation around Mars. But there's a planet even less lucky than Mars. That very simple formula was discovered in the 18th century by a couple of astronomers, Titius and Bode, and this pattern was named after them. However, there was one vacant place in this sequence. There was no planet that should have been located between Mars and Jupiter, at a distance of about 2.8 astronomical units from the Sun. There is an asteroid belt in its place. The reasons why the planet collapsed have not been reliably established. The hypothetical planet was named Phaeton. If we substitute reference data on the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun into the formula of the law of universal gravitation, then at the moment when the Moon flies between the Earth and the Sun, for example, at the moment of a solar eclipse, the force of attraction between the Sun and the Moon is more than 2 times higher than between the Earth and the Moon, so that the satellite of the Earth, according to the law of universal gravitation, should have long since flown out of orbit. Don't you believe this? Do the math yourself, you will be very surprised. The axial rotation of almost all satellites is in sync with the orbital one. Astronomers know that the moons of Earth, Mars, Saturn, except Hyperion, Phoebe and Ymir, Uranus, Neptune, except Nereid, and Pluto are constantly facing their planets with one side. In the Jupiter system, this rotation is typical for a significant number of satellites, including all Galilean ones. And the Pluto-Charon pair is twice as unique. They always face the same sides to each other when rotating. For designers of space elevators, they would be an ideal testing ground. But while we can build a space elevator only in science fiction books so far, someone seems to have already been engaged in the construction of real star systems. Or was it still easier to organize a simulation, a virtual universe? What do you think? It's time to move into the comment section and find out the opinion of experts. And especially for those who have already rated this video. Let's show this picture once again, in case you haven't found the panda. See you soon on Subversion.